Hi, stars. I'm Marla, or you can call me Marley, and welcome to my channel, Marla and Martins. I have a very hard time reading aloud, and this has really messed up my joy and passion for reading. So I thought maybe reading aloud to you guys would help me with this anxiety that comes with reading aloud. So, y'all are also going to be the reason I get through some of my DNFs. The first one being The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. I think I got about 100 and something pages into this book, and then I found out their age difference, and I became deeply concerned. Also, you probably won't ever get a face reveal from me, just to be fair. So, back to what I was saying. The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. I have the very pretty cover. It's from the Cranford collection. It was at Barnes & Noble. I got a lot of the books from this. I did, however, have someone steal my version of The Pride and Prejudice, which was very disappointing, but oh well, it happens. So, how about we begin? Edith Wharton, The Age of Innocence. Volume 1. On a January evening of early 70s, Christine Nislin was singing in Faust at the Academy of Music in New York. Though there was already talk of the erection in remote metropolitan distance above the 40s of the new opera house, which should compete in the costliness and splendor of those of the great European capitals, the world of fashion was still content to reassemble every winter in the shabby red and gold boxes of sociable old academy. Not of sociable, of sociable old academy. Conservatives cherished it for being small and inconvenient, and thus keeping it out of the new people New York was beginning to dread it, and yet be drawn to, and the sentimental clung to it for its history, associations, and the musical for its excellent acoustics, although so problematic a quality in halls built for the hearing of music. It was Madame Nelson's first appearance that winter, and what a daily press had already learned to describe as an exponentially brilliant audience gathered to hear her, transported through the slippery snow streets and private programs in a spacious family landau. I'm already out of breath, this is how you know I don't read out loud. Or in a humbler but more convenient front coupe, I'm assuming, to come to the opera in front coupe was almost as honorable a way of arriving as in one's own carriage, and departure by the same had all immense advantages of enabling one, with a playful allusion to democratic principles, to scramble into the first brown convency in line instead of waiting till the cold and gin-congested nose of one's own coachman gleamed under the portiere of the academy. That word is cut off halfway through, which makes it incredibly hard to read. It's POR-TICO. I even spelling it out cannot believe that. Back to the novel. Of the academy. It was one of the greatest livery stablemen's most masterful intuitions to have discovered that Americans want to get away from the amusement even more quickly than they want to get to it. I can't say that wrong in this novel. It is actually oddly accurate on some occasions, and I found that appalling when I first started reading it. When Neil and Archer opened the door at the back of the club, box the curtain had just gone up on the garden scene, and there was no reason why the young man should not have come earlier, for he had dined at 7 along with his mother and sister, and had lingered afterward over a cigar in the Gothic library with glazed black walnut bookcases and final top chairs, which the only room in the house where Miss Archer allowed smoking. Why would you smoke in the library? I feel as though that seems like a safety hazard. And maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'm at fault here, truly. But in the first place, New York was a metropolis. I'm perfectly aware that in Metropolis there is no such thing. Aware that in Metropolis it was not a thing to arrive early at the opera, and what it was or was not the thing played a part in Archer's New York as the inscrutable totem terrors that had ruled the destinies of his forefathers thousands of years ago. The reason for his delay had been a personal one. He had waddled over his cigar because he was at heart a dilettante, I believe that's the word, and thinking over a pleasure to come often gave him a subtler satisfaction than its realization. This was especially the case when the pleasure of a delectation one, as his pleasures mostly were, and on this occasion the moment he looked forward to was so rare and exquisite in quality that, well, if he had time to survive for it, in accord with the prima donna stage manager, he would not have entered the academy at a more significant moment than when she was singing, "He loves me, he loves me." No, that is not what that says. He loves me, he loves me, he loves me, and sprinkling the falling daisy petals with notes as clear as dew. She sang, of course, "Madame," and not "he loves me," since an unalterable and unquestionable law of the musical world required that the German text of French operas be sung by Swedish artists should be translated into Latin from clear understanding of English-speaking audiences. This seemed natural to Newland Archer, as all other conversations on his life was molded, such as the duty of using 2 silverback brushes with his monogram and fluid able to part his hair, and of never appearing in society without a flower, preferably a gardenia, in his buttonhole. "Madame, non madame," the princess sang, "Madame," with a final burst of love triumphant as she pressed the disheveled daisy to her lips and lifted her large eyes to the sophisticated contents of the little brown Faust couple, who was vainly trying at a tight purple velvet doublet and a plumed cap that looked as pure and true as his artless victim. Newland Archer was leaning against the wall at the back of the club box. His eyes turned from the stage and scanned the opposite side of the house. Directly facing him was the box of old Miss Mason Mingot, whose monstrous obesity had long since made it impossible for her to attend the opera, but who was always represented on fashionable nights by some of the younger members of the family. On this occasion, the front box was filled by her daughter-in-law, Miss Lovell Mingot, and her daughter, Miss Whitman. Inside the trunk, behind those 2 brocaded matrons, sat a young girl in white, with eyes aesthetically fixed on the stage letters, as Madame Nelson's "Madame" thrilled out above the silent house. The boxes always stopped talking during the daisy song. A warm pink mounted on the girl's cheeks, mantled her brows to the roots of her fair braids, and suffused the young slip of her breast to the line where it met a modest turtle feather fastened with a single gardenia. She dropped her eyes to the immense bouquet of lilies of the valley on her knees, and Newland Archer saw her white-gloved fingertips touch the flowers softly. He drew a breath of satisfied vanity, and his eyes returned to the stage. No expense had been spared on the setting. which was acknowledged to be beautiful even by people who shared his acquaintance with the opera houses of Paris and Vienna. In the foreground, the footlights was covered with emerald green cloth. In the middle distance, symmetrical mounds of woolly green moss bounded by croquet hoops formed the base of the shrubs, shaped like orange trees, but studded with large pink and red roses. Gigantic posies, considerably larger than the roses, and closely resembling the floral pen wipers made by female passionators, Burbank's far-off prodigies. In the center of this engaging garden, Madame Nelson in white cashmere, slashed with pale blue satin, in reticule, I cannot say this word, I do apologize, dangling from a blue girdle, and large yellow braids, carefully disposed on each side of her muslin chemisette. I know what this word means. I can never pronounce it, so I do deeply apologize for that. Listen with downcast eyes to Capoul's impassionable wooing, and the effect of kindness and incomprehensions of his demands for the his glance returning back to the young girl with the lilies of the valley. She doesn't even guess what this is all about. And he contemplated her absorbed young face with a thrill of possessorship in which pride and his own masculine initiation was mingled with a tender reverence for her abyssal maturity. While we fussed together by the Italian lakes, he thought, somewhat hazily confused by the scene of his projected honeymoon with the masterpiece of literature, which should be his manly privilege to reveal to his bride. It was only that afternoon that May Woodland had let him guess that she cared. New York's consecrated phrases of maiden avowal, and already his imagination leaping ahead of the engagement ring, the betrothal kiss, and the march from Lonhaven. I'm sorry, this is a place I cannot pronounce. Pictured her at his side in some scene of old European witchery. I'm so sorry, that was so bad. Witchery. He did not in the least wish for rejoining this new Archer to be a symbol to him. He meant her, thanks to his enlightening companionship, to develop his social tact and readiness of wit, enabling her to hold her own, the most popular married woman of all the young set, in which it was the recognizable custom to attract masculine homage while playfully discouraging it. If he had probed to the bottom of his vanity, which he sometimes nearly did, he would have found there that the wish for his wife should be as worldly wise and as eager to please as the married lady whose charms had held his fancy the mildly agitated years, without, of course, any hint of the fragility which had so nearly marred that unhappy being's life, and had discarded his own plans for an entire winter. Oh, the tragedy for him! How this miracle of fire and ice was to be created and to be sustained itself in a harsh world. he had never taken the time to think out, but he was content to hold his view without analyzing it. Since he knew it was all of that, the carefully brushed white waistcoat, button-flower gentleman who succeeded each other in the club books, exchanged friendly greetings with him, and turned their opera glasses critically on the circle of ladies who were the product of the system. It mattered intellectual and artistic. Newland Archer felt himself distinctly the superior of the chosen specimen of old New York gentility, I believe. He had probably read more, thought more, and even seen a good deal more of the world than any other man of the number. Seemingly, they betrayed their inferiority, but grouped together they represented New York, and the habit of masculine solidarity made him accept their doctrine on the issues called moral. He instinctively felt that in this respect it would be troublesome, and also rather bad form to strike out for himself. "Well, upon my soul," exclaimed Lord Lefferts, turning his opera glasses abruptly away from the stage. Lord Lefferts was, on the whole, the foremost authority on form in New York. He had probably devoted more time than anyone else to the study of this intricate and fascinating question, but study alone could not account for his complete and easy competence. One only to look at him, from the slant of his bold forehead to the curve of his beautiful fair mustache, to the long patent leather feet at the other end of his lean and elegant person, to feel that the knowledge of form must be congenital. I don't know. In anyone who knew how to wear such good clothes so carelessly and carry the height in such a lounging grace, as a young admirer once said to him, if anyone can tell a fellow just when to wear a black tie with evening clothes and when not to, it's Larry Lefferts. And on the question of pumps versus patent leathers and Oxfords, his authority had never been disputed. "My God," he said, and silently handed his glass to the old Sillerton Jackson. Newland Archer, following Lefferts' gaze, saw with surprise that his exclamation had been occasioned by the entry of a new figure into old Miss Mingott's box. It was that of a slim young woman, a little less tall than May Welland, with brown hair growing in close curls about her temples and held in place by narrow bands of diamonds. The suggestion of this headdress, which gave her what was called a Josephine look, was carried out in the cut of the dark blue velvet gown, rather theatrically caught up under her bosom by a girdle with a large old-fashioned clasp. The wearer of this unusual dress, who seemed quite unconscious of the attention it was attracting, stood a moment in the center of the box, discussing with Miss Welland the propriety of taking the latter's place in the front right-hand corner. Then she gave a slight smile, seated herself in line with Miss Welland's sister-in-law, Miss Lovell Mingott, who was installed in the opposite corner. Mr. Sillerton Jackson had returned the opera glasses to Lawrence Lefferts. The whole club had turned instinctively, waiting to hear what the old man had to say, for old Miss Jackson was as great an authority on family as Lawrence Lefferts was on form. He knew all the ramifications of New York's cousinship, and could not be elucidated on such complicated questions as that of the connection between the Mingots, the Thurleys, with the Dassells of South Carolina, and that of the relationship of the outer branch of the Philadelphia Thorleys and the Albany Shiveries, on no account to be confused with the Mason Shiveries of the University Palace. But had also encumbered the leading characteristics of each family, as, for instance, the fabulous stinginess of the younger line of Lefferts, the Long Island ones, or the fatal tendencies of the Rushworths to make foolish matches, or the insanity recurring in every second generation of the Albany Shiveries, with whom the New York cousins had always refused to intermarry. I also want to intermarry with someone who is known to be insane. Also, I do apologize for the continuous voice switch and accent switch. Actually, I'm not even listening to this back before I posted, to be fair. I already know I'm probably going to sound insane, so this is just unedited clips. Who had always refused to intermarry, with the disastrous exception of poor Medora Mason, who, as everyone knew, but then her mother was a Rushworth. In addition to this forest of family trees, Mr. Stellington Jackson carried between his narrow, hollow temples, and under his soft thatch of silver hair, a register of most of scandals and mysteries that had smoldered under the unruffled surface of New York society within the last 50 years. So far, indeed, did his information extend, and so acutely retentive was his memory, that he was supposed to be the only man who could have told you who Julius Buford, the banker, really was, and what had become of handsome Bob Spicer, old Miss Mason Mingot's father, who disappeared so mysteriously with a large sum of trust money, less than a year after his marriage, on the very day that a beautiful Spanish dancer who'd been delighted in thronged audiences, who'd been delightingly thronged audiences in the old opera house on the Battery, had taken ship for Cuba. But these mysteries and many others were closely locked in Mr. Jackson's breast. Not only did his keen sense of honor forbid him from repeating anything privately imparted, but he was fully aware that his reputation for discretion increased his opportunities for finding out what he wanted to know. The glove box, therefore, waited with invisible suspense while Mr. Stellington Jackson handed back Lawrence Lefferts' opera glasses, and for a moment he silently scrutinized the attentive group out of his flimsy blue eyes overhung by old veined eyelids. Then he gave his mustache a thoughtful twist, and said simply, "I didn't think the Mingots would have tried it on." That is the end of chapter 1. Which, to be fair, I think I only actually read about 3 pages, but the language is very difficult, and I think we're on page 13 now, and let me tell you just how many this book has. And it has 291 pages. Sorry, I don't know why this audio is so inconsistent. But 291 pages. We're ending on page 13. I hope you have enjoyed this time together. I hope it has lulled you into a nice sense of comfort for the night, and hopefully a chance for sleep is what I'm actively alluding. See, I do have a nice vocabulary, I just don't exactly have the confidence or the trust in my voice to use it. I hope you will have a wonderful night, or that this can help you make it a better night. I hope you all read the stars that that sounds nearly cruel. You are all stars and you all shine brightly in your own way. Sincerely, yours, Marlo.